there, everyone. Long time no see. It's Boniface from Unum Sanctam Catholicam, and this is October 7th, 2022. And I wanted to just go over with you guys this goofy article that I read online in America magazine. Yeah, I know, America magazine, right? It's entitled, "In Historic First, Pope Francis Approves an Ecclesial Conference with Lay People instead of a bishops only leadership body." And this is such a weird article. It's like a combination of just being frightening and alarming, and also just goofy and ridiculous. So we're just going to go through some of this here. So let's take a look at this. We scroll down a little bit. The first, okay, okay. So um, when you see a picture like that, it tells you everything you need to know about where this article is is going to go, right? Okay. Well, this is looking fantastic already, but let's continue on. "We are living a kairos, a propitious time of God in the history of the church," says Cardinal Pedro Barreto Jimeno, SJ. We are living in a kairos. Okay. So first thing is, whenever they start using Greek words like kairos or kerygma, that's when you need to watch out, because shenanigans are afoot when they start tossing in these Greek words. Okay, I'm going to go on at this rate. We're never going to get through if I keep ripping on this thing like this. Okay, so let's go back here. So, in an exhaustive interview in Rome on September 6, he reveals that Pope Francis has approved the statute of the Ecclesial Conference of the Amazon, the CEAMA, giving it formal recognition in the church. And this guy, Cardinal Barreto, is the Archbishop of Huancayo. I'm probably butchering the pronunciation. In Peru, he's the president of the Amazon Conference. Now, this essentially, the novelty in this is that it is essentially replacing a regional bishops conference, right? Like in the United States, we have the USCCB. So this new entity is replacing the bishops conference, and instead of being made just of bishops, it has lay people, it has priests. It's basically a big hodgepodge of people from all sorts of different backgrounds and classes and states and life and whatnot. Speaking in Spanish, he explained. Why does it need to specify he's speaking in Spanish? He's from Peru. Like, it's like you're interviewing a guy in Peru and you have to specify that he's speaking in Spanish, right? That's like saying, in an interview with King Charles of England, who was speaking in English. Like, why are they doing that except to point out, I don't know, is this just for periphery points or something to show that they're in the peripheries? I don't know. Anyhow, he explains that the body involves bishops, priests, women and men religious, and the lay faithful from the 9 countries of the Amazon region. It is the first of its kind in the history of the church, the first concrete fruit of the Amazon Synod. And this cardinal is one of the 3 president delegates of the synod. Okay, so in the Amazon, then they've got this new body, CEAMA, which has not just bishops, but priests, women, men religious, and lay people who are going to be taking an active role in the government of the church in Amazon, in the Amazon region, or Amazonia, as this document will continually refer to it for some reason. So this is a big deal. This is replacing the Episcopal conference with some sort of hodgepodge of lay people and bishops and priests. Now, okay, Episcopal conferences themselves were a novelty, right? And I know the word synod has kind of worn out its welcome here in 2022, but traditionally, like before Vatican II, regional governance, if you needed something above the diocesan level, you would have a regional synod. We've had these throughout the history of the church. Sometimes they were called councils, like a regional council, like the councils of Baltimore or the councils of Toledo in Spain. Sometimes you have synods, like the Synod of Orleans in 511 in France, or the Synod of Whitby in the 7th century in England. So synods and regional councils were the way that you dealt with kind of regional affairs in the church traditionally, and they were exclusively Episcopal affairs, because the bishops, of course, are the princes of the church. They are the ones who govern the church by divine institutions. So this is a really new thing to incorporate these folks in here in the actual government of the church, not just an advisory role, but in the actual governance. The cardinal goes on to say that the CEAMA can be compared to the small mustard seed that grows little by little and spreads its branches to welcome the entire universal church, which means that they're envisioning this model is going to spread throughout the world. He expects similar ecclesial conferences to emerge in Africa and Asia. He doesn't say anything about the United States or Europe, though. You notice that? It's nothing about the United States or Europe. It's just it's just Africa and Asia. And I think there's a reason for this, why they don't envision this as a structure for the United States or Europe. Mainly, I think that people wouldn't stand for it there. But I want to refer you to an article on Unum Sanctam Catholicam that I wrote a while ago, Another Bold Stroke from the Pope of the Peripheries, which talks about how Pope Francis uses these regions that he refers to as the peripheries for something that I call Machiavellian delegation, which is that when Francis wants to try something that is very novel, that may provoke resistance from the church, he does so in regions that he calls the peripheries. So certain changes are strategically delegated to regions where Francis knows they will return a result favorable to his agenda. So he knows that, for example, in the United States or Europe, something like this would face massive backlash. And so he kind of exports it to the peripheries, to a place like Amazonia, where he knows he's going to get a result favorable to the agenda. And in this way, he can get the result that he wants, but it can also appear that it's coming from the people, right? It can appear that it's coming from the peripheries, that it has some sort of popular sanctity. And then these changes are presented not as a bureaucratic fiat, but as yielding to the voice of the people, as something that the God of surprises has foisted on us. So if you look at this little diagram here, it shows that change, radical change, is outsourced to the peripheries. Meanwhile, power is centralized in the Vatican in the person of the Pope. So that's the way that Francis tends to. That's his modus operandi with how he works these things. So I think that's why it is not being envisioned for something for Europe and the Americas, at least yet. So let's continue on here. He says, the Cardinal predicts that in the coming years, bishops' conferences will have to transform themselves into ecclesial conferences. No explanation why this will need to happen. It's just kind of taken as a fait accompli. And that is the way they kind of work with these things. Every novelty is just kind of shoved down the church's throat. And then as soon as it's in place, it's like, oh, we can't go back. We can't go back. We can't turn the clock back. It's portrayed as an absolute necessity that the good of the people of God demand. But of course, there's no reason why we need anything like this. And then he goes back to Predicate Evangelium and the Synod of the Amazon. And the Peruvian Jesuit recalled that the final document of the Synod on the Amazon was approved by the Pope. And he says this was revolutionary because prior to that, each synod would propose its recommendations to the Pope, who would incorporate them into his post-synodal exhortation. He says, however, that in the situation of the Amazon, Francis did not follow this model. Instead, he presented the synod's final document to the whole church when he published his exhortation Querida Amazonia, saying, this is the Pope speaking, I've preferred not to cite the final document in this exhortation because I would encourage everyone to read it in full. This is very interesting. You might kind of gloss over this if you're not paying attention. So, what it's saying is that traditionally, when you have a regional synod, the bishops would present their the results of the synod to the Pope, and the Pope would kind of pick and choose things from the synodal document to include in a post-synodal exhortation. But what the cardinal's saying here is that in the Synod of the Amazon, Francis did not do any of that. He didn't cite the document at all. He basically just paraphrased it and then told the faithful to go read the document. Now, I think the reason Francis did this is because had he actually incorporated the text of this document into his post-synodal exhortation, that would imbue it with a level of authority that I don't think Francis wants it to have. Because it'd be, it would be some sort of papal teaching in some respect. He's doing what I have called on my blog. He's doing a strategy where you don't teach things in an official level, but you promote them and draw attention to them to give the impression that this is the official teaching, even while you haven't taught it magisterially, so to speak. So by not including the actual text of this document in his post-synodal exhortation, he's basically saying, I want you all to read my vision for the Amazon, but I'm not going to I'm not going to put my own stamp of authority on it. Now, I think this is so. I think this is so Francis can play it safe. If there's massive backlash against it, he can say this was never my idea. I never signed off on this. This was what they did. This is what the Amazon bishops did. But then, if it is received, and if the church does go along with it, he can say that, as I pointed to in my post-synodal exhortation, he didn't cite it exactly, but he supported it, and he can take credit for it. It's what I would call a policy of strategic ambiguity in dealing with these ideals. So let's go on. It emphasizes the need for a new ecclesial body to promote synodality and the shape of a church with an Amazonian face while seeking new paths for evangelization and an integral ecology. Gobbledygook. Let's go on. Talks about indigenous peoples and ecology and stuff like that. The cardinal says, I was struck by the fact that while being a synod for Amazonia, it nevertheless laid out new paths for the whole church, not only for Amazonia. Therefore, the Pope was thinking of the universal church, but starting from the existential periphery of the culture of Amazonia. That's what I was saying. These more radical changes are being exported to the peripheries, but make no mistake, this is a vision for the universal church here. He's starting in the peripheries. The most radical stuff goes to the peripheries, where Francis is certain that he'll get the result he wants, and then slowly, as it becomes established precedent there, it will be introduced elsewhere throughout the church. So he goes on to say that one could say the Ecclesial Conference of Amazonia is the best gift that Pope Francis has given not only to Amazonia, but to the universal church. Why? Because up to now, there have been Episcopal conferences, but Ecclesial Conferences of Amazonia is the first of its kind in the history of the church. Did you hear that, everyone? The Ecclesial Conference of Amazonia is Pope Francis's greatest gift to the universal church. Well, hallelujah. Why is it the greatest gift? It doesn't even offer a justification. It just says it's the greatest gift. The Ecclesial Conference is the greatest gift. Why? Because it's not an Episcopal conference. I'm no fan of Episcopal conferences. I can, but still, there's no rationale why this is a gift. It just says, because up to now there have been Episcopal conferences, but the Ecclesial Conference is the first of its kind in the history of the church. It essentially saying this is the greatest gift because it's new, because it's not the old thing, it's the current thing, it's the thing of current year. Therefore, it is the greatest gift ever. I just can't even with these documents. All right, let's go on. All right. The cardinal recalls that the second chapter of Vatican II's dogmatic constitution on the Church, Lumen Gentium, is devoted to the people of God, whereas its third chapter speaks of the bishops at the service of the people of Jesus. Cardinal Barreto recalled that the Second Vatican Council saw the eruption of the Holy Spirit in the renewal of the universal church. Okay, I'm calling BS here because I have Lumen Gentium in front of me. He is basically saying that this is what Vatican II called for. I don't think I read the chapter or the paragraph. He says, he says, this is in accordance with the Second Vatican Council. And he says, Lumen Gentium, chapter 2, is devoted to the people of God. And the third chapter, it speaks of the bishops. So he's kind of saying that the people of God take precedence before the bishops. Now, if you look at Lumen Gentium, chapter 2, the people of God, the cardinal here is speaking of the people of God as if it's referring to the laity. It is not. Lumen Gentium is referring to the people of God as the entirety of the church. In case you're not familiar with the phraseology people of God, Vatican II wanted to get away from preconciliar nomenclature and speaking about the church, terms like perfect society, mystical body of Christ, and people of God was the preferred terminology to speak of the entire church. So when you hear Vatican II talking about the people of God or the pilgrim people of God, it is speaking about the entire church, not just the laity. And so when it says that, Vatican II puts priority on the people of God first, the people of God is simply the entire church. And it goes on to say in Lumen Gentium, chapter 10, though they differ from one another in essence, not only in degree, the common priesthood of the faithful and the ministerial or hierarchical priesthood are interrelated. Now listen to what it says about the ministerial priest. By the sacred power he enjoys, he teaches and rules the priestly people, acting in the person of Christ. So that's what Lumen Gentium says about the ministerial priesthood. It rules the priestly people of God. And then the faithful join in the offering of the Eucharist, and they exercise the priesthood, their priesthood of the faithful, by receiving the sacraments, witness of a holy life, self-denial, and charity. So there's nothing in Lumen Gentium 2 or 3 that talks about the lay people participating in ruling the church. In fact, in that same chapter, in section 21, it says the bishops. Where is it? Okay. It says the Sacred Council teaches that bishops, by divine institution, succeed to the place of the apostles as shepherds of the church. So I think this actually undermines the cardinal's argument. It says that there's a division between the hierarchical and the priesthood of all believers, that the rule of the hierarchy is to rule the church as successors of the apostles through the bishops, and that this is through divine institution. So you're literally saying that you're screwing with divine institution here. It doesn't make any sense. Asked if the new Amazonian body could be considered one of the great novelties of this pontificate, the cardinal emphasized this is not something new from Francis. It really stems from the Second Vatican Council. And again, this is nonsense. Show me in the documents of the Second Vatican Council where it says that the lay people participate in the government of the church. It does not. In fact, if we go to chapter 4 on the laity, it talks all about the laity, but basically it says the laity serve the church. This is in chapter 31 of Lumen Gentium. They seek the kingdom of God by engaging in temporal affairs and ordering them according to the plan of God. The very essential characteristic of the laity is that they are involved in temporal affairs. And Lumen Gentium gives all sorts of examples. It says by performing their jobs and ordering them towards Christ, by having holy marriages, holy families, by participating in volunteer work for the church. It says nothing about governing the church with the bishops. The hallmark of laity is that you sanctify the secular world through your secular activities. But this goes back to what I think is the fundamental modern error, is the blurring of the distinction between the sacra and the saecula. Let's go on. So then he compares it to a previous organization, the REPAM, the Pan Amazonian Ecclesial Network, set up in 2014. Listen to this language here. This is a ecclesiastic of the Catholic Church talking. Barreto recalls that the REPAM includes a unit that focuses on human rights in the Amazonian territory and reports rapidly to the United Nations, the Organization of American States, and the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights when these rights are being violated. Uh, a unit? This ecclesial body has a rapid response unit? This just sounds like bureaucratic nonsense. A unit. We had we had dioceses, metropolitans, eparchies, patriarchates, and now in current year we have units. Oh wow. Wow. All right. Okay, now it says the cardinal explains the conference is developing an Amazonian rite that is called for by the synod in reflecting on the experiences with Amazonian rites, liturgical expressions, and spirituality. And he says that that he ran this by Rome, process of dialogue with the Dicastery for Divine Worship with Cardinal Roche, and that it was received in a fraternal way with an attitude of listening. And then he goes on to say that from the very beginning, the church has sought to inculturate the gospel in every possible way, and Pope Francis has affirmed this has to be done. And then he recalls Matteo Ricci, the Italian born Jesuit who really went down the path of enculturation, but Roman centralism blocked this effort on the question of Chinese rights. Okay. The cardinal has no idea what the question of Chinese rights is. Now, the way he frames this, he says, we want an Amazonian rite, and he's talking about the liturgy, an Amazonian liturgy. And then he tries to say that the church has been down this path before with Cardinal Matteo Ricci and the Chinese rites. Okay, the Chinese rites controversy of the 1600s was not about whether there was going to be a Chinese rite, a Chinese liturgy. The rite that is referred to in the Chinese rites controversy was a traditional Chinese ritual of paying homage to one's ancestors and paying homage to Confucius as a prerequisite for being admitted to the civil service exams. In other words, it was not referring to liturgical rites. To a lesser degree, it was about the name of God that Chinese converts used to refer to God. But the actual rites, when it says Chinese rites controversy, that was about whether Chinese Christians could perform the traditional rite of honoring their ancestors. But the cardinal here thinks that it's talking about a liturgical rite. He's trying to compare Amazonian liturgical rites with the Chinese rites controversy. He doesn't even know what it is. They're two totally different things. He expresses joy that now Rome is wanting to welcome, listen, and proceed with accompaniment. It's our favorite word, accompaniment, right? He talks about the roles of women, the role of indigenous women, blah, 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 blah. Then he concludes by saying Cardinal Barreto revealed the dicastery for bishops at first felt disconcerted by the new ecclesial group. They felt disconcerted. You wonder why? This is just a novelty. It's just made up. Of course, the dicastery of bishops is going to be disconcerted. It says, why are they disconcerted? He says, they didn't know how to relate to the ecclesial conference in the Amazon. Who does? This is complete novelty. But here's classic modern church for you. It says they didn't know how to relate to the ecclesial conference, but then Cardinal Marco Let approved it anyway. That's what it says. It says that the bishops didn't know what to make of it, but then Cardinal Marcolet just, okay, stamp. We don't understand this. We don't know how to relate to it. We're not sure what it is, but okay, boom. All right, so that's it. He concluded the interview with these words: "We're living in a very special moment of the grace of God. It is a time of hope in the midst of a desperate, aimless humanity." Okay. Oh gosh. Like I said, this is a very unique article. It's cringeworthy, it's alarming, and it's ridiculous all simultaneously. Well done, America Magazine. Well done. Anyhow, that's it. I just wanted to review that with you. What are your thoughts on this? Leave them in the comments. And thanks for sticking with the Unam Sanctum channel. I haven't posted videos in a long time, but I got a new setup here. And I'm going to be doing some more videos because I just think they're fun, and it's fun to walk through this stuff with you guys. We have to smile. We have to continue to laugh at this. The devil hates laughter. He hates mockery. And as I've been praying yesterday in adoration, I was praying, Lord, grant that we might smile again, and may it be so. All right, everyone. Thanks. I'll see you in the next video.